Hello, welcome back to the channel. I am hopping on here to do this video to talk about how my mediumship abilities have changed. I've been meaning to do this video because, like everything else on this channel, I'm trying to document my journey as it goes, and these videos are themselves like my vlog diaries. I really want to just portray that, you know, mediumship isn't necessarily something that everyone is born into knowing how to do or even doing at all. The gifts really do grow with us, and they grow depending on who you're learning from, what you're learning, and how your perspectives change. So whether you are a medium watching this or not, or just some kind of intuitive or psychic or healer or whatever, I think that this holds some value, just hearing in other people's stories of how their abilities shift and grow throughout their spiritual journey. So here's mine. So I want to do a little recap of when I first started, and this is going to be another video for another time, is my 7-year spiritual awakening update. Can't believe I'm starting to crawl up to a decade, but again, that's a video for another time. This video is just going to talk about how my mediumship has changed since I took a class and started pursuing it. So I'm just going to do like a little recap for anyone new who's watching, or just a refresher for those who have been with me for a while. I see you. So when I first started mediumship, and I still vividly remember my first day walking into, it was an in-person class. I had an in-person teacher. And yeah, I just remember being like, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know anything. I'm just here to try and connect to my loved one who passed away, and I really miss them and I really want to talk to them. That's my origin story. That's my lore. And so in those first classes, probably the first few weeks, I'm gonna say I was the least experienced person. I actually had zero experience going into it. All the other people in the class had some sort of practice or already innate ability to connect to spirit and recognize evidence and symptoms of like what they were receiving. So back then, I really didn't get much. I would pretty much only ever get like one piece of evidence in every class. 1 to 2, and I would either feel like a vibe, or I would really push myself to try and see something. Like I would close my eyes and I would try to figure out the blobs and the shapes that I was seeing in like my closed eyelids. So I don't know if I was like seeing like my blood vessels or what, but somehow I actually did get evidence through that. So for instance, I remember someone had brought a photo in of their father, and he was wearing just this like really gorgeous white suit, and for whatever reason I just remember looking at it and I just couldn't get anything, and I was like, I just think he's a musician, but it's probably because he's wearing this fancy suit that I'm thinking of like Frank Sinatra or somebody like that. I was thinking of like back in the day. It turned out that he indeed was a musician. That like took me aback, because everybody else had like 10 things they were able to say about this person, but I really only had just one. And that was it. And that was really all, but it was great. You know, it's not like, oh, that was it, I only got one thing. Yeah, I got one thing, but it was spot on to the person. That was kind of how it went. And then over probably like the next couple of weeks, I really started getting a lot of kinesthesia, which is when you feel movement and you want to like move your hands or, you know, make motions. But a lot of my mediumship was mainly just evidence on like either hobbies or their character. Messages were so hard for me, you guys, mostly because it was my own block, because my thinking was like, for whatever reason, every time we got to like the message portion of either practicing or reading, or again, this was like my early days. This was before I was doing readings for anybody outside of my class. Whenever we got to the message portion, I would I would draw a blank because I was like, oh my God, the message could be anything. It could literally be anything. So how am I supposed to know what they're giving me when I can barely even get like evidence for these people? Okay, so before I ramble on too much about this, a very pivotal point in my introductory journey was when I realized that if I just said what I needed to say, and just whether or not I cried a lot. Giving those, for every time I connected to spirit and had to give a message, like I was always crying. I was really afraid to be vulnerable back then, and you really do have to be vulnerable when you're giving a reading, because you have to allow yourself to express feeling on behalf of who you have in spirit. And these are people's loved ones, and they're coming through with that sense of love. And if you can't like feel into that, you're not really going to get the message out. You're going to have no idea what they're talking about because you're just holding it all in. Yeah, there was a lot of crying back then because I was just learning how to be emotionally vulnerable. And that was, I guess, Spirit's way of teaching me how to do that. Where I went from there, afterwards, I flew the nest. And I remember that's when I started doing, I think I shortly started my YouTube channel after that. And I was just like practicing readings on people here on YouTube. And from then on, my mediumship was very heavily evidence-based, where I was very highly focused on like, I need the evidence. And I was really pushing myself to have like the person's eye color, their height, their age, their weight, very specific things they cooked in the kitchen, like really, really spot on things. I really pushed myself with that. That's really how it was for quite a while. And what's very interesting looking back is, although I pushed myself to be super evidence-based, a majority of my readings all turned out to be spirit guides. Even if I wanted to, well, it wasn't about me. It wasn't what I wanted. A lot of people, I'm gonna say probably like 99% of people who ever got a reading from me were very, very open to receiving whoever. It was more rare for me to get someone who like knew they wanted to talk to a loved one than it was for people who were just like, I'm just open to see what happens. And so a majority of the time I would get people's spirit guides. They tend to be very hard to validate because most people, I would argue, don't really know who their spirit guides are. So what evidence can you really get on them? At that point, it started becoming more about the message, and whatever spirit gave me, how do I explain this? Like, a lot of the time, if you can't pinpoint or don't have any evidence on like what they looked like, who they are, their relationship to, things like that, the evidence lies in the message. And spirit will bring through things like, we see that you're having a hard time with some kind of project that you're working on, and things like that. And that is evidence in itself that yes, there is, you know, your spiritual team is watching over whatever's happening in your current day moment. There's evidence in the message itself. But I was I want evidence about like who you are. Show me more evidence about like the person you're connected to. And I wouldn't get it. When you try to push spirit, or when you try to push the universe, they will give you lessons to help you shift your perspective and help show you whatever you're focusing on is really not as important as you are making it out to be. Like, they were bringing more emphasis to what truly was important, trying to have me let go of this like evidence I need. Yeah, that started shifting my readings more into like, okay, let me just, you know, let go, and just whatever comes through comes through. And if people identify their guides, great. If not, then most of the time they were able to take the message anyway. Okay, I think I'm almost caught up to the present day. And so the two biggest developments I've noticed in the last year and a half is A, really leaning into trusting what I get and just saying it even if it doesn't make sense to me, and B, really learning to self-regulate in a reading, especially when I'm losing the connection, or I'm not getting any validations, or it's not making any sense to my sitter or my client or whoever I'm reading for, and I feel like I'm starting to falter, or like the energy is dissipating and I'm like, I don't know where this is going. The self-regulation thing has been so key. I don't even know how it started coming about, but whenever I would find myself in readings where, you know, maybe a few messages of the evidence, it just wasn't landing, the spirit coming through wasn't able to be identified, and my person's like, I don't know who it is, I don't know what this means. You kind of naturally kind of start to grasp at straws. You're like, oh, let me just try to get something that makes sense. Let me just, give me anything. I certainly did used to be that way. And I think most people probably start out with that being like their knee-jerk reaction in a reading when you start to get like no after no after no. But now I have learned to like really regain the reins in a reading because I'm the facilitator. Like I need to have the ability to navigate the energy in a reading between us because I want to have a good experience. I want my person I'm reading for to have a good experience, and I need the spirit to get their message out so that everybody can get their healing. What I do now, which I think is just almost subconscious, like I didn't even really notice this until one of my good friends brought this to my attention, shout out to Eva, is that when I feel like I'm kind of losing the connection in one shape or another, I will literally just reset the reading. I'll be like, okay, let's both take a deep breath. Let's both picture the person we're trying to connect to, or, you know, whatever it is, and I'll just reset the floor because I don't want to continue off of the energy of like, I'm shaky. I'm just gonna sit back, relax, because oftentimes that's what you need, is to just relax again. With that comes trusting spirit, and I just trust that, you know, I'm getting these things for a reason. They will come to light to the person who's receiving them in time for a reason. The more that I learned to trust what I was getting, again, even if it didn't make any sense to me, it's not supposed to make sense to me, it's supposed to make sense to you or whoever's getting the reading. The more that I trusted that and would just say what I got, the more that I would get things. So who would have believed it? All right, the final thing that I would love to talk about, and this is actually what spurred this video more than anything, is how my values of mediumship have changed. From where I first started to where I am now, this is less about like the technical aspects of it and more about how my beliefs have changed and how now that shapes my readings and my connection with spirit, and how that's funny. As soon as I said that, I just feel like whoosh, they're here. Now when I read for people, now when I have someone in front of me and their person in spirit comes through, or their guide or guardian, I don't focus on trying to put them into, you know, check off a box, male or female. Like usually when they would come, that's what I would do. I would be like, are you a man? Are you a woman? Are you androgynous? How old are you? And obviously I'm kind of dramatizing it a little bit. I wouldn't harass them, but I would, you know, be mentally asking all these questions to start trying to paint a picture, because that's how I was used to doing it. I was used to having a method of, I forget what it's called now, but it's like some acronym of like, what do they look like? What are their hobbies? What's their character? And then what's the message? And that's how it would go. And now I let them talk. I let them say what they want, and they will bring through who they are in the way that they want to. You know, I'm not here being like a doctor checking off, you know, did you smoke? Did you, what drugs have you taken? You know, I'm not here doing that. It's less of an intake with the spirit and more of a, you know, like a three-way conversation of you, me, and your person, and we're chilling in the park. And even then, you know, I really do feel like something that's shifted the reading so massively is introducing more feeling into it and having more participation from the person receiving it. Because I don't want it to seem like you're just sitting there with your bowl of popcorn, eating and watching me do this reading. I want you to feel like you're involved too. When that happens, you also get the feeling that I get. You know, you also get to feel like, ooh, like I'm getting a chill. I feel sensations. I feel this loving presence starting to bubble up within me. And that lights me up. That is so cool when I see you receiving kind of like mediumship as well, when you're picking up on stuff too, even if you've never done it before. So clearly you could tell I'm very passionate about it. I think that's pretty much it. The main takeaway is that the feeling of my readings have changed and they feel more expansive now. And now I welcome kind of a free-for-all in the reading. Like, I don't keep it to just spirit guides or loved ones. Now it's like, whatever, you know, past lives, animal spirits, soul to soul, which is also very cool because it's kind of neither psychic nor mediumship. It's like its own whole own category. I really feel like it's opened up this more magical and mystical space for me to tap into and access and kind of like journey into with people. Yeah, I mean, obviously I still really strive to try and get the most niche evidence for folks. It's less about me trying to get it and me just kind of asking like, hey, Spirit, can you give me something that's really going to differentiate you for the person in front of me? And sometimes they bring through like the most random thing that will just be like the nail on the head. Like, I had a Barbie show up one time and the recipient was like, oh my God, like I'm working on my feminine energy. And I'm just like, yeah, just like fun things like that where I'm not forcing the person in spirit to answer my questions. I'm really opening it up to like a whole new level of creative evidence that can come through when I don't place those boxes for them to check. Hopefully that makes sense. And that's like the biggest thing for me is I also feel this sense of like, it really fills me with this sense that I'm about to like step into a whole new world. Like, yes, I have already kind of started like dipping my feet or dipping my toes into this kind of style of reading, but I really feel like I'm about to enter like a whole new door with it. And I'm very excited to see where it leads and where it ends up. And this is going to be a video for another time, but I'm even more so excited to see how my classes change with this new perspective shift that I've had, because up till this point it has been very rigid by the book, by how all of my other teachers have taught me, and now it's going to be more fluid and kind of free for all creative. Obviously still structured, because as an earth sign that's what I do best, but we're going to see what happens when we just open up to possibility and see what comes through. All right, well, if you've made it this far to my self-reflective monologue, congratulations. And yeah, if you are an intuitive or a medium or resonate with any of this in any way, I'm curious about your experience. I personally don't really see a lot of people talking about how their gifts and abilities have changed. Most people just talk about like where they're at, but I'm all about like the growth. So yeah, if you have any interesting stories, please drop them in the comment box. Again, please like and subscribe and comment. Just leave me a little heart. It helps the channel, and I'm really trying to revive the community. So thank you for all the people who are supporting. And yeah, again, my November readings are open. The link to book is in the description box. And I'm stoked to see where we go from here. So I will see you in the next one. Bye for now.